recording.
There we go. It just
All
went
right,
live.
in case it. Oh, is it? We're live. All right. Well, welcome to the Full Circle. This is a fun, different episode than what we normally do. I have Michael with today and his wife Kristin. This is the Monday episode of the Full Circle, so things are going to be a little different. We're going to kind of play with things a little bit and try different techniques out. And so the Monday Full Circle is kind of some food for thought for the week and some weekly practices to kind of implement into your week. So with that, welcome Kristin, welcome Michael.
Hello.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be with you.
What, did I say something different?
I don't know. Chris just stopped.
Chris stopped.
Are you there, Chris?
He has slow internet.
Did we lose him?
I still have a little picture of him, but it's not moving.
Yeah, mine's not either. Oh, Andy's gone. We'll give him a minute.
Okay. We'll talk to each other from different rooms of the house.
Andy's back.
I totally, yeah. Yes. I told you I have poor internet. I am on vacation. So if you are watching this on Google Plus or YouTube, you can see here I am in focus. You can see my face. And as I sit back, everything behind me comes into focus. And you can see I'm on vacation. So typical vacation internet, pretty shatty, so I cut out here and there, so I apologize for that. But so we're excited to have
Should we start over? Should you start over the introduction so you can edit that out for the actual podcast?
Sure. And welcome to the Full Circle. I'm Chris Eischen here. This week I have Kristin Mataluni and Michael Mataluni with me. And on the new Full Circle Monday episode, giving you guys a chance to do some food for thought for the week, give you a daily practice to implement for the week, and we're going to try a few different methods of recording. So today we have Michael and Kristin on as guests. So welcome, guys. This week, do you want to lead in, Michael, to kind of what this week's going to be we're kind of working on this week?
Do you want me to host it, Chris? Do you want me to just host the episode? I'm just wondering if we could be a little more expert about what we're doing instead of saying we're practicing and we're trying and we're doing this. Why don't we just own it as this is what's going on? Does that make sense?
Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
All right.
So you want me to just start over again?
Yeah, just start over again, and so just host. This is the Full Circle with Chris Eischen. We've got Michael Mataluni. Our weekly topic is about gun violence in schools. And let's just go right into it.
Okay. Welcome to the Full Circle. This week I'm Chris Eischen. This week I have Michael and Kristin Mataluni with me to talk about gun violence or just violence in general. I think in schools and in our society. So there's a few things that our Wednesday interview was with a gentleman that has started a program to kind of help bring more awareness to this issue and primarily focused on video games. But today we're just going to kind of talk about it overall. So welcome, Michael. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you, Chris.
To the Full Circle.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
So, violence in video games and violence on TV, how is that like affecting our society, and what are your guys' thoughts on it? What are your takes?
Well, I mean, yeah, we talked to Eric Lehman this week, and I actually just got off another phone conversation with J40 today, and this has been our major topic for the week. And one of the things that I find so tragic in our society is that, you know, we're coming to a point in the U.S. where we have more than a school shooting a week. And this is not the most important topic in the news media. Why? You know, what's going on out there that we're allowing this to go on, and we're really not hitting this from the front? Why is this something that we're avoiding? Or when we do talk about it, all we're talking about is the right wing versus the left wing, and they're just arguing back and forth about gun laws. Like, there's got to be some deeper, more systemic issues that we're not talking about. And I had the opportunity to talk to Eric Lehman this week from Game Changers, and his organization gets violent video games out of the hands of the youth. Now, do violent video games cause school shootings? I don't think it's a direct cause, but I certainly think it has an effect, and the pervasive violence in our society is going to have an effect on these kids, and I think that we need to be doing a lot more and talking a lot more about it.
Now, I know Kristin has a pretty strong opinion on this matter, and the reason that we wanted to have her on the show today is because I kind of have, it's not a polar opposite, but I don't have as strong of a feeling about video games as being a cause of this violence. I think it's a deeper issue in that video games are kind of a symptom of that deeper issue, the popularity of the video games and everything else. So, for example, my son's 13 years old, and I allow him to play war games such as, you know, your Call of Duties, or games such as Grand Theft Auto. And I know a lot of parents are surprised by that fact, that I don't have such an issue, or that I let him play those games. But I think it's important to realize that, you know, allowing your kids to play those games, whether you think they're related to gun violence or not, or just violence in general, I think any video game, regardless of what the premise of the game is, should be limited to a certain amount of time per day or per week or per lifetime spent playing those games. You know, there's a whole world out there that is here to be experienced, and it's not to say that you can't have emotion or experience some sort of feelings and stuff when you're playing video games, but there's just so much more in the world to why drown it out with game consoles. So, Kristin, could you kind of give us your thoughts and opinions on the subject?
I have, it's a long history for me. You know, it started out when we had the foster boys, and you know, it was a period of time just after Christmas one year. We had like two 16-year-olds and a 15-year-old in our house, and you know, they were boys who were going through a drug treatment program, so they were obviously not considered the best kids in the world to begin with. But they all got a video game system, I think, that Christmas from their parents, even though their parents were like terrible. They weren't doing a great job, obviously, which is why they were staying at our house. So, but you know, the parents still gave them the big expensive gift for Christmas, but then no love. So obviously that was, you know, the first number one big problem. And then, you know, I was watching, they had all these games in the house, and I thought they were pretty awful, but I hadn't really stood up and said anything because, you know, it's their brand new toys or whatever. And then, like 2 months after Christmas, I think it was in February, locally, we had a police officer. There was like a public disturbance, and he went to these people's house, and they tried to arrest their son, and the kid shot him in the face. And I told them after that they weren't allowed to have any more violent video games, that I wasn't going to have it, because there was a lot of speculation that this was all this kid did, and that he had learned that either you have no respect for anyone, and he'd been doing it over and over again on his video games, so he really didn't have a problem pulling a trigger and shooting a police officer in the face and ending the man's life. And yeah, so I mean, it was
because of
traumatic.
that video game.
Because of the video
in a
game?
video game, there's no consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. And in
And
the
so
video
in
game,
real
the
life, he's
guy
not.
who dies doesn't have children and a family and people that care about them.
Right, there's no consequences. It's a matter of desensitization. So I grew up playing violent video games. I grew up playing Mortal Kombat. I grew up playing Street Fighter 2. I loved these games. These games were an outlet for me because I needed something to take my mind off of whatever it was that I was going through. Luckily, I never, had the inkling to go rip somebody's throat out like I saw in a video game. I never had those inklings to do that. Now, Jay and I were talking this morning about this, and well, what separates a kid who is, playing video games and seeing all this violence and becoming desensitized to it, because I was kind of desensitized to it, but I didn't want to act it out in real life. But what separates the kids who don't and the kids who do? And I think it has to really do with that home life. Like, I always, as crazy as my childhood was, I always had unconditional love. Like, I always knew no matter what I did, my parents were going to love me. I always knew that I was going to have that. I wasn't like, there was some emotional stuff that was very painful and could be considered borderline abuse or abuse. But, I always had that sense of love, had that sense of safety in my home. I always knew that I was going to be safe. And maybe that's the difference. Maybe it's these kids who play these violent video games who are desensitized, who have no consequence to the video game, and then all of a sudden, they're not getting any kind of sort of love or understanding or appreciation from anybody in their family, and so now they're numb, right? So maybe it's these two things or multiple things that you add together, and that's what creates these kids who go to school have no appreciation for human life whatsoever. Like, that's what boggles my mind. They don't care. If they kill that kid and that kid's whole family loses that kid, they don't give a shit. That's the problem. So where is that coming from? Is it partly video games? Probably has something to do with it. Is it all video games? Absolutely not. How could it be? How could your son or me growing up who had no inkling to go kill somebody from playing violent video games, and then there's another kid who does? Well, there's got to be some more systemic issues here. But I think the point is that all of these things combined have an effect. They have an impact.
Well, absolutely. And I think that, like, the exposure to the video games just as one thing, they can expose a child to so many things. I mean, when we're talking about the Grand Theft Auto thing and the, like, as far as I understand, making yourself more powerful by screwing prostitutes in the backseat of the car. I mean, that is really exposing children, and it's something that their parents aren't talking to them about. It's like when my son had seen something on Lego Star Wars one day, and he was playing with his Legos, and he said the word torture. That was like a red flag for me. I was like, you don't use that word in my house. Because of his age at that period of time, I'm like, do you even understand what you're talking about? Do you know what that means? Do you understand what a horrific, horrific word you just used? Not that he was in trouble, but that I wanted to focus on what he had just said and make sure that he understood the implications of what he was talking about. So when they're exposed to all these things, so it's not just video games, but I think it's violence on television and all these different things that are coming from different places, and they take it all in as just the way everybody else takes it in, casually. Oh, that just blew up. Oh, 40 people just died over there. I can't watch Pirates of the Caribbean without getting sick to my stomach because I watched 40 guys get pulled down in a ship. That's really creepy. But most people don't feel that way. They're like, oh yeah, ship, whatever. Lost lives, we don't care. I mean, it really, we've become that way.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I also think that there are people who have become that way who don't feel like that in real life. I mean, you can watch a movie and go, it's a movie. This is a consequence-free environment. These things aren't really happening, and be okay with that. But I think what we've failed to realize is the effect it has on our consciousness and how we see the world. And even if we don't think it does, maybe it does more than we think. And it's the same reason that you pay $30 million for 30 seconds on for a TV space at the Super Bowl. It's because if we think that these things don't have an effect and make us behave in certain ways, I think we're kidding ourselves. And we lost Chris.
I agree. No, I'm
can
back.
Hear him. Is he there? Yeah. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
No, but it was like I was reading the other day. I mean, I think part of it is like a disconnect for kids because they don't understand how violent our society is from its very roots. I mean, we are a deeply, deeply violent society. We came in here, took away our entire country from the people who were here before, did it by horrific means. And we never address that with our children. Our children don't even know how horrifically we stole our country from the people who were here before us. We hide it. It's a secret. So that makes them nervous to begin with.
Well, and I think, and I often look at these things from a spiritual level too, and a kind of an energetic karmic level. And it's like, if our society has, we came in here, we stole the land, we slaughtered the natives, and we took it over, and then our violence has continued over time, it's almost as if we're experiencing now that those things that have been kind of swept under the carpet for so long, we're experiencing the process of retribution. And I think it's incredibly interesting how we're experiencing it. And I'm not going to say that because we slaughtered the Indians, now kids are going to shoot up schools. What I'm saying specifically is that over time, we become desensitized to these things, because this is exactly how we took the land that we're living on today.
Well, there's a theory of inherited guilt. It was talked about a lot, after Nazi Germany, and then what happened to the Germans, and not as a result, but some of the people said they felt so guilty that they felt that they were suffering in a karmic way. I'm not going to put that in the words of all people, but from some of the accounts that I've read. So it would be surprising if it could carry on through so many generations, but it's possible to imagine that we do feel a huge amount of guilt for what we've done, that quite frankly our leaders have tried to hide for us for generations and generations.
That's a great point.
I'm wanting to chime in, but every time I have so far, I get cut off. I end up losing signal. Yeah, but last time I was like, "Oh, this is a good point. I want to add on," and I go to say something, and it's like, "Boop, goodbye."
we can hear you now.
So, yeah, well, I agree that there are video games and movies, and the overall perspective of society is definitely going to have an impact on the way that we see things, the way that we think, and everything else. But when it comes to just video games or movies, I think those are just symptoms of what we are experiencing in our society. When we have a nation that is going around the world and forcing people to live a certain way, or invading other countries, we're the only country that has forces so thickly spread throughout the world. You don't have that with other countries. So we have literally become police of the world. And I think that has a greater impact on our society over the fact of video games and movies. I think video games and movies are created because of the way that our society lives, not that our society is the way it is because of video games or movies.
No, of course.
I personally don't. But I don't believe that these school shootings and that the violence that we're seeing in society is a result of video games or a result of movies. That desensitization has been happening when you turn on the television and you watch news. I think I stopped watching the news because everything that I'm bombarded with when I turn it on is negativity, and more negativity. It has been a focus on all of the things that are wrong with society and wrong with this world. And as Mike Dooley and loves to say, thoughts become things. And the more we think about, the more that we focus on all of these negative issues, the more they're going to tend to manifest in our society.
So, Chris,
and they're manifesting in...
Right. So, I mean, to your point, to that very nature, thoughts become things. So if a kid, this powerful creator whose thoughts can become things, is sitting here inundated by violent video games, how does that not become a thing?
Right, when it makes them feel powerful in a place where they're kind of powerless, so they feel really good when they shoot people. I mean, that's sort of...
and that's where I think it's important.
What?
Well, that's where I think it's important to limit the time that you spend, having exposure to those things. Limit the amount of the type of violent movies that your kids are seeing. Limit the time frame in which your kids spend playing video games, regardless of what type of video game.
Well,
my son's been playing Grand Theft Auto for, he's 13 now. In all honesty, he's been playing it for probably 5 years. So at 8 years old, he's playing Grand Theft Auto. But at 8 years old, he had no clue how to do a lot of the things that you can do in those video games. Like, did he know that you could pick up weapons and run around and shoot things with it? Well, yeah, but mostly what did he like to do? He liked to get in the car and just drive, and that's how he started. And as he got, has grown older and older, he's learned how to do more and more. But at the same time, you don't see him thinking that he can go out into society and do those things because he knows one's a video game and one's reality. To add to that, I don't think that because a kid plays video games that you could put a gun in his hand and he can go around and shoot people and think that there's no consequence to that, because the kid knows there's a difference between a video game and reality. Same to your point, Michael. Well, because and that's where my point is. The point is how our involvement with our children and our involvement in our kids' lives. Why do we have Kick-Ass Dad? Why do we do this show? We do it because to help parents, people out there to be able to relate to their kids more. Well, if your kid's sitting there in his room for 6 hours, it's summertime, right? So, if your kids are sitting in their room playing video games most of the day, instead of going out and doing things and exploring and everything else, that's wrong. Your kids shouldn't be inside for that long. They shouldn't be playing video games. They shouldn't be watching TV or watching movies. But if your kid died, really, they turn on the TV, they're going to be bombarded with violence, sex, all the things that we don't want our kids, because our society is so entrenched in that in every aspect. So it's not just the video games. It's not just the movies. It's the video games, the movies, it's the TV, it's the newspapers, it's everything on the internet. Not literally everything, but it is so everywhere you look. So how do you get away from that? And I think what we're doing in this movement that we're creating in Kick-Ass Dad is the answer to all of those problems. So do I say stop making violent video games, stop making violent, stop doing all those things? No. Just you become a more aware person and you start to be more present in the world. Those things become less of something that you care to do because you're present in what's going on right now in the moment. So you're not going to be sitting in the house playing those videos. You're not going to be sitting in the house, watching these movies. Reason I feel, this is 100% my opinion, but the reason I feel that Columbine and all of these things happened is because these kids don't have influence in their lives. Their parents are not involved in their lives. They don't have a positive role model, positive person in their lives to guide them. And they're lost and they're confused and things like that. So to say that the video games or the movies really have anything to do with it those are just symptoms of the problem. The problem is the lack of involvement in our society. And to my point, when you send your kids outside to go play, if you look back 30 years ago, I talked to my mom the other day, and she's saying,
Did we lose him?
I think we did.
Well, there's a good point, but Chris's mom was probably at home 30 years ago when he was a kid, and if we're talking about our kids during the summer right now, there is a vast majority of them that are sitting home and mom and dad are both at work, and there's no parent there to say you need to go outside and play. And
right. And no parent to say not to play that violent video game. And I agree with Chris when he says these are systemic issues. Like, these are symptoms of a greater cause. But that doesn't mean that we don't address symptoms. Like, we have to go to the root cause, but I think we can deconstruct our way back to the root cause by identifying the symptoms. Without knowing what the symptoms are, you really can't get to the root cause. So, limiting use of violent video games, limiting use of violence on television, and, I disagree a little bit about what he said about sex, but what I do know is that the sex that's being portrayed on television is not the kind of understanding of sex that I want my kids to have.
Right.
There's a much better way to look at sex than I see in most sitcoms and most television shows and the movies and all that. So, his point holds weight there. I agree with him. I think that the idea is we've got to get back to these root issues. But a lot of this is systemic issues where we have in our society where parents
word properly. But
did you just come back, Chris?
Oh, you guys are there.
Yeah, we're here.
I'm back.
So we were just saying that we agree with the idea that these are systemic issues. We agree that violent video games are a symptom of a deeper problem. However, one of the things that I find to be powerful about what Eric is doing with Game Changers is saying, okay, come in, trade in your violent video game for a workshop in how to live your life in a better way. Come trade your video game in to learn how to do some art. Come trade your video game in to learn this. So we're not saying that the video games are the problem. What we're saying is we have an opportunity to shift the symptoms into the solution, and I think that's where we can really make an impact with where our stance on video games.
Yeah.
But what that takes, first of all, that takes the parents stepping up and having that active role in their children's lives.
Well,
period.
not necessarily, though. Not necessarily. There are a lot of kids out there who don't have that, and they're not going to have that. So the Game Changers movement allows them to make a choice on their own, and then allows them to plug into people and a system that is moving in a different direction. So, but I agree with you. The parent, if more parents are active and available, but we have so many parents who are stuck at work and they're stuck here and they don't know how to get out of these things.
And that's what we were saying. You were talking about when you were a kid. Well, there are so many kids at home right now in the middle of the summer. They're old enough to stay at home by themselves because their parents have to work, and that situation's probably not going to change anytime soon. And yet no one's there to tell them not to play video games or to only play video games for an hour. They're pretty much on their own. And to speak to the intelligence level of these kids, I have known some brilliant, 12, 13-year-olds that would jump at a chance to take their future in their own hands because mom and dad really just were not there. And I'm talking about kids whose parents were just too busy with their own lives, their own addictions, not present, and these kids were ready to take control of their future. So presenting them with a way to do that is a fantastic idea, and it's very, very relevant. Am I talking all by myself now?
That's a great point. I think we lost Chris again, but that was a really good point. And I completely agree. And again, I don't want to make video games the villain, because that's not the point here. The point is that we've lost control as a society. Parents are not as present as they could be. That's why we do what we do at Kick-Ass Dad, to help parents become more present. But to your point, Kristin, about giving them a chance to take their futures into their own hands, whether or not their parents are present or not, is a significant opportunity, and it could be life-changing for a lot of children.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Are you back, Chris?
I'm back, and I can't even argue that point because I have no idea what you said.
Well, basically what we said was we agree with you in that these are symptoms of a greater problem, but the idea of Game Changers is to give kids an opportunity to take their future back in their own hands, give up some of the violence, and look for more opportunities to become more present themselves, even if their parents aren't ready to step up and do so.
I understand that, and I don't have a problem with that. I mean, that's not an issue. I mean, if my son can take a video game he no longer plays and trade that in and get something positive back from that, that's awesome. But do I think that's going to stop him from playing those types of video games? Absolutely not.
Well, I mean, why not?
Because what it'll do is his old version for the new version. That's what that will become. So it's like you're trading in, Call of Duty 3, Call of Duty 4, or, or Grand Theft Auto 3 for Grand Theft Auto 4, or Grand Theft Auto 4 or 5, or whatever.
How are they doing that? How are they trading it in? They're trading it in for a different experience.
You're saying they're... Right. In what he's doing, in the Game Changers, he's taking their video game, their violent video game, and offering a program in exchange for that. But what I'm saying is that is a great idea, but I believe in the effectiveness of it is lost because I think the games that he's going to be collecting are the kids' old games, so they'll be trading in their Grand Theft Auto 3 or 4 because they don't use it anymore.
Right, sure, but then it doesn't go to somebody else who's another kid who, that younger kid or whatever. And I get your point, but I think that, you're taking the stance that, well, he's going to go trade this in, and then he's just going to get, episode 5. Well, who's letting him get episode 5?
Right. And if you're talking about kids, I mean, we're speaking about kids that have a lot more access to things. I mean, it's when you're talking about kids in lower socioeconomic areas, this might be a huge, sacrifice for them if they can't buy the next new video game, and maybe it'll make a huge difference. Maybe they'll, get engaged in a program and decide that they really aren't interested in playing the video games anymore.
Exactly.
It's hopeful. It's very hopeful. It's not, but what
What do we have? What else do we have?
What's the alternative?
Yeah, exactly. Like action. I mean, it's like it's taking an action towards something. And again, to your point, Chris, these are symptoms of a greater issues. But what if it leads them back into a path of consciousness? What if it leads them back into a path of mindfulness and respect for their lives and for other people's lives? So it's a cool idea, and I think it's got merit. And so I look forward to working with Eric to see how we can bring this to people who it can really benefit. Did we lose Chris again?
Maybe.
So, Kristin, can you tell us where we can find you?
Can you tell us where we can find me?
Yes. Kristin's new podcast is called Your Daily Rant with Silly Mommy Looney. You can check her out on iTunes. Just search Your Daily Rant. You can find us there. Thank you so much for Kristin for joining us today. I'm now assuming the host role of the show since we lost Chris. You can obviously find Chris and I here at kickassdad.org. You can also find us at kickassdad1 at gmail.com. Looks like Chris might be back. Any final words, Chris?
I guess let's just wrap it up.
All right. Thank you,
everybody.
That
is the chance. Right. And thanks for joining me for the few minutes that I was able to stay on.
Yes, it was fun. Chris had some technical difficulties today, but we did get some great ideas out there. And again, this is not about who has the right idea. It's about who has an idea that's willing to take action and move forward towards peace. This is not about blaming anybody, blaming video games, blaming this, that, or the other. It is about how do we create a better society for ourselves, for our children. How do we start a movement towards peace and understanding and get away from some of the things that our society tends to want to create. So thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you, Chris, for having us. And we'll catch everybody in the flip.
All right, thanks. We'll see you guys.
Probably would have been better if David was on there since. What? What is it?
I thought you did a really good job.
Thank you.
I think we should start doing that more often.
Okay, yeah, I've never done it before, so I didn't like really know where to look and stuff. It was weird for me, but
But it's only gonna be audio, really. I mean, it will be on the YouTube channel, but don't really worry about the video. Not about the audio. But yeah, you were great.
thank you. Yeah, I need to.
It's my turn. It's your turn.